Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 8 of Club Fitting Chronicles. Wow, episode 8. How about that?
It's hard to imagine that we've done it that many times.
8 times. Lucky number 8. I'm your host, Josh. Joining me, as always, is our co-host, Gene. How are you doing, Gene?
I am doing well, and I am so happy to hear that you are doing well, because the reason for us being late again, Josh decided to get sick again.
I got the flu.
So, yeah, at the puke-em-ups.
Man, it was a stomach virus. It was no fun at all. Wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. So today's topic is club heads, right? But as always, in every episode, I'd like to give out a shout out to all of our listeners and downloaders from various different countries and states in the United States. If you guys could give us a like and rating on whatever platform you use to listen to us on, or watch us. If you watch us on YouTube, don't hesitate to subscribe and like this video. But give us a rating on whatever platform you use. We would greatly appreciate it. And any inquiries you have about club heads, don't hesitate to email Gene, email me at clubfittingchronicles@gmail.com. That would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, we got a couple this week, but most of them wanting me to help them with clubs.
Oh, gotcha. Well, hey, you're the guy to do it. You're the man. So before we get into club heads,
I want to give a quick shout out to our Alabama group. I need your help. I'm coming out to Alabama to play the Robert Trent Jones Trail again in May, and I'm thinking about going up to Capitol Hill. I've played the legislator before, and I've played up in Muscle Shoals, but I'd be interested. What courses should we play? We are going to probably base ourselves around Montgomery. What are the courses we need to play in the 3 or 4 days that we're going to be there? I'd love to hear from you guys.
Where's my invite? Why can't I go to Alabama?
You're probably at spring break.
I'm always
probably
on
at spring break at that time.
Come on now. I'm a college student. I'm always on spring break mentally. Okay, so before we get into club heads, we talked about shafts in the last episode. Is there anything that you would like to briefly touch on or possibly connect the two of them together?
Yeah. First of all, I've been asked a couple of times about if a shaft is too flexible for me, will that cause me to go right or slice the ball? If you're a left-hander, obviously that would mean go left. And the quick answer is generally not. Normally, if a shaft is too flexible for you, you're going to hit the ball slightly higher, and it's going to tend to be more of a draw type bias, or it could be a hook. If the shaft is too stiff, generally, the rule of thumb is the golfer will hit the ball a little bit lower and a little bit more to the right. But obviously, golf swings can do that all by themselves without the shaft being a part of it. But that's one of the things that you kind of start looking at. If you're feeling yourself that maybe these shafts aren't correct for me, that would be, I'm tending to hit the ball right. And I'm playing a stiff shaft, and, I'm getting older, and I don't think my club head speed is quite the same. It could be the shaft is a large contributor to that. On the other hand, you're one of those young guns, and you picked up an inexpensive set, or you have the shaft made by for the major manufacturer who produced the heads. Generally, if it says regular on it, I assume it's closer to an A flex. If it says stiff, I assume it's closer to an R flex. Rarely are they as strong as they say, simply because they know the average golfer has way more ego than they do club head speed. And they don't want the club to feel awful. And generally speaking, when something is brutally stiff for your swing, it does feel pretty awful. It's kind of a boardy feel. And so they try to avoid that like the plague, because they don't want people running around going, oh, I hate this club. And these are the worst clubs ever. So they tend to, if they're going to err, they're going to err on the more flexible side. So with that, we're going to talk about lofts on irons. That's what we're going to start with. And we have a lot of different topics to talk about, Josh. And one of the things that I have found over the years, and it's not a hard and fast rule, but it's pretty normal to see, is when people are swinging heavier shafts, they tend to de-loft the club more at impact. When they're playing a lighter shaft, they tend to de-loft the club less. My thought is simply because there's nothing forcing me down to the ground the weight-wise, so they tend to flip the club a little bit more so they're not de-lofting it as much. It may be that their hands are still slightly in front, but they're not as in front as with a heavier club. And I was sharing with Josh off camera and off audio a couple years ago. I made myself a set of Tom Wishon single length irons, and I put a heavier than what I'm normally playing shaft in it, but a much more flexible tip, because my concern was all being the same length. My 6 irons clubhead speed, 7 iron clubhead speed, because I made the clubs at a 8 iron plus a 1/4 inch. And so I figured the longer clubs, I needed to get the ball airborne, because I know how single length irons work, and we'll talk about that in the future. But I knew I needed help getting the ball up, and I was thinking, the reason for the little heavier shaft is because the clubs being shorter, I tend to put a little heavier shaft into my wedges and than I do in my regular irons. And I thought, well, it's an experiment, so why not? Well, I noticed immediately my trajectory, lofts are the same between my PXG and my single length iron 6 iron. I changed the loft on this PXG to make it a little weaker because I tend to de-loft the clubs a lot. And I noticed the ball flight was about 20 feet lower with my single length clubs. I thought, okay, what would happen if I put my same shafts that I have in my PXGs? Ball trajectory the same. Got the ball up in the air a lot higher, and I could just feel myself not forward pressing quite as much at impact because of the shaft being lighter. Now my swing weight's higher, but the overall weight of the club is definitely less than it used to be. And today I was out at the range, and was one of the marshals was out there, and he had his new set of stealth irons, and those shafts are really light. And the first thing I noticed is how I flipped the club and helped the club get the ball up in the air with those. Kind of a telltale sign, if that's you, our listener, our viewer, you prefer the ball being in the light rough than on the really shortcut fairways. Because if the ball is on the fairway, I love the ball being on the fairway because I'm trapping it. I don't like the ball in the rough because all that rough, I'm going to hit the ball high on the face, generally speaking, because I'm going to be going down at it and I'm going to lose some distance.
Yes, I've experienced that before.
Josh, I saw you nodding your head. You probably feel the same way. Don't like it. Especially out here in Arizona with our, a lot of times the Bermuda, when it's dormant, the ball sits right up on top. And, so many players that I play with go, whoa, I love this. And they'll intentionally hit the ball towards the rough. They don't want to have the ball in the fairway. And that's more because they tend to flip their hands to help get the ball up in the air. Especially the older, the strong player, but has a lightweight shafts. Those players especially, I notice, flipping, getting the ball up in the air, hit the ball 1.5 miles high. They have a little bit more clubhead speed than I have, but our balls are going about the same distance. And it's simply because they're hitting it with about 8 degrees more loft than I am, the way they go about it. That being said, how is loft measured? Well, let's see. Basically, so you're going to have the shaft straight up, and they're going to have some kind of a device. We used to have the green machine, and you put I have a simple protractor now. I put it up against the face, and it measures 29 degrees. I don't know if you can read that, but it measures 29 degrees. Most of the time at impact, our hands are in front like this. So if I take that same measurement, let's see, I am now at 20 degrees. So I have de-lofted the club 8 degrees. And that would be probably pretty close to my normal starting position where with my hands, let's see if I take off this headset and keep talking. So back up a little so you can see. But normally at address, kind of like in this position. Well, that's that 8 degrees I've already taken off the club head. At impact, not unusual to have my hands even a little bit more in front. Well, why are you telling me that, Gene? Who cares? Well, I did some research, and I played back in college. We used to have to fight off the pterodactyls that would be flying overhead.
Sure.
And we'd have to tether small children down, so that they couldn't be picked up. And my 5-iron in 1970, when I was in college, was 32 degrees. In 2006, that 32-degree 5-iron was now called a 6-iron. That was the new technology everybody was just wowed with. Oh, I'm hitting the ball one club further. Well, yeah, because your 5-iron now is the loft of your 4-iron. Your 6-iron is the loft of your 5-iron. And I can remember even a little bit before that, there was a hole I used to play. The golf course doesn't exist anymore, but it was at Fallbrook Country Club in Southern California. And the 9th hole was straight uphill, and it was about 115 yards or so. And with the uphill, it probably played closer to 120. Well, if I hit my pitching wedge, I hit the soda machine that was over the green next to, and hopefully missed the window of the clubhouse. Because I would hit my pitching wedge about 135 or so, 138, and it was downhill, and it would bounce off of there was a cart path back there, and the ball would just, boom, and it was gone. Well, if I hit my sand wedge, I could almost get to the front edge of the green. Well, how come I can't hit the green? And I was brand new at club making, and I decided to take a sand wedge one day and bend it 4 degrees. The reason I didn't bend a pitching wedge is because then I would have a lot less a lot more bounce. I wanted less bounce, so I took a sand wedge and went the other way with it. And that became my 9th hole club. And I didn't know it at the time, but I had invented an A wedge. Because my pitching wedge, I later found out, was about 46 degrees. My sand wedge was 56 degrees. I had 10 degrees between the two clubs. That's a big gap. That's a missing club. Well, amazingly, in 2006, they started coming out with this thing called a 52-degree wedge, or an attack wedge, or a gap wedge. Fast forward. Oh, let me back up. Those of us who are old enough to remember Jack Nicklaus standing there with his 1-iron, his 1-iron was probably 17 degrees. Okay. 2-irons, you still got a 2-iron in your set a lot of times. That was 20 degrees. A 3-iron was 24 degrees. There's kind of a rule of thumb with club fitters, a lot of the good club fitters, 24 degrees of loft and over 38 inches of length. Anything less lofted than 24 and anything longer than 38 is hard to hit for the average golfer. Really good golfers can do it, but the average golfer has trouble with it. So my worst club in my bag when I was playing in college was my 3-iron. My 3-iron was 38.5 inches long and 24 degrees. Now, it wasn't that I couldn't hit it. It just wasn't the most dependable of my clubs. Give me a 5-iron, I felt like I could hit most any green. Give me a 3-iron, and I felt like I could get the ball going forward in some direction. and it would be somewhere around the green. It might hit the green. It may go right. It may go left. I just wasn't as consistent. Fast forward, by 2006, you couldn't find a 1-iron. Nobody made them because a 2-iron was now 18 degrees of loft. Fast forward further, and this is the part that just they started doing this in the mid 2011, 12. They started making game improvement clubs with less loft than players' clubs. They started making game improvement clubs longer than players' clubs. Same numbers. That makes no sense to me as a club fitter. I have never found a person who needed a lot of extra help and we need to make it longer so that it's harder for you to hit, because it's not hard enough as it is. So in 2000, I did a Google search a couple days ago, and I went through all the major companies, and I just kind of did a compilation of the numbers I found. Game improvement clubs. There is no such thing as a 1-iron. There is no such thing as a 2-iron. There is no such thing as a 3-iron. Why? Because the 4-iron is 18.5 degrees of loft. Think about, I de-loft the club. Let's say I'm only de-lofting the club 6 degrees. Well, now I'm at 12. I hit down slightly on the ball, because usually with the 4-iron, it's not a big down, it's slight down. So now I'm maybe at 11 or 10 degrees. Launch angle is a little bit less than the loft on the face. So I'm launching that ball at maybe 10 degrees. Now, if I am John Rahm, I can get the ball up in the air. But as Gene Bonk, I can get the ball to stay under an overpass and not hit any of the cars going over the top, because it's not enough loft for me. I can't get the ball up in the air. You take a 5-iron, 21.5 degrees of loft. And now,
right,
if I teach you to, not de-loft the club and kind of help the ball up, flip your hands a little bit, am I really, the ball might roll through the green better because there's no loft. Because what causes spin? Loft and speed. If you don't have any loft and you don't have enough spin to stop the ball, what do you do when the flag is right behind a trap and the trap has a lip? And I'm 150, 160 yards out. Well, the guy using the game improvement club probably isn't going to reach the green anyway, but he's going to probably be in the back of the green somewhere because the ball's not going to stop rolling.
Right.
Excuse me. You have the players' clubs. Same 2023. 4-iron is 1.5 degrees weaker lofted. It's 20 degrees. A 5-iron is 23 degrees. A 6-iron is 26 degrees. You notice that the change from one club to the next is only 3 degrees. Somebody with my club head speed around 75 miles an hour with an iron, we're getting about 5-yard separation between those clubs. Because we're not hitting the ball hard enough, and we're not hitting the ball with enough spin to make it fly. And so the ball is going to go, and the next one's going to go, and it's just going to, we're replicating the same thing over and over. And I used to have people all the time, they would, I love having a 4-iron. And I said, let's hit your 4-iron on TrackMan, and then let's hit your 5-iron. And look, you hit your 4-iron 3 yards further. Now it rolls, but how often are you trying to hit a 4-iron onto a green so that it'll roll to the back? That's a question that you have to have. One of the things I always started with when I'm doing a fitting is I'm going to measure the loft of the clubs that we are, usually in a fitting we're hitting 6 irons. So I want to know exactly what your 6 iron loft is, so that if you're hitting the ball further, we can determine what's causing that. Is it, and we are checking where contact is being made and all that. Is it centerness of contact? Is it a little bit more club head speed because the shaft is lighter? What's going on? Why is the ball going further? Today, off of a mat, when you're at a, fitting center, generally, you hit down on the ball, you compress the mat slightly, you hit the ball a little bit higher on the face, the ball launches. I could launch the ball really high off of mats. Mm-hmm. Hit about a 1/4 inch fat, ball goes up in the air pretty well. And it's hard to tell sometimes. I would put my foot up against the mat so I could feel, and I'm watching and listening for contact, and I'm trying to tell, okay, was that mat or was that ball first? And we would sometimes put tape under the ball so I could see, did you hit the ball and then hit the tape, or did the tape start balling up as it got into where the ball was at? And I only did that when it was challenging to kind of tell where the person was. The only real new technology that's out there is high coefficient of restitution irons. And those are the ones either that are filled, it's a hollow cavity with some kind of a polymer fill in them, or there are some that are just standalone thin faces, and they're welded or somehow attached to the framework. And as a result, you get about 3 to 4 mile an hour more ball speed. And that 3 to 4 mile an hour more ball speed obviously will make the ball go a little higher because it's traveling on that trajectory. And then you're going to get a little bit more distance out of them, probably 5-6 yards, which is, nobody ever said, no, I don't want to hit the ball. Well, I've had one person say I didn't want to hit the ball further, but he had 125, 30 mile an hour club head speed, and he didn't need it to go any further because he was hitting his pitching wedge, from 170 out. And it was why do I even carry the other clubs? So big thing to understand is what's the loft on the clubs that you're looking at, and understanding, you want to find out, is it I'm de-lofting the club less and that's why I'm able to hit the ball higher? Wonderful. But is that a good thing? I'm only de-lofting the club 1 degree. My hands are almost back, in a neutral position at impact. Well, that's not the way to deliver the most club head speed to the ball. It's hard to hit the ball like that, flipping your hand. I've known a few golfers who can hit the ball straight up in the air. But generally what happens is as you get shorter and shorter clubs, the ball's climbing up the face more and it's going shorter and shorter and shorter significantly than with the longer irons. Let's see. What did I forget, Josh? Anything?
I don't think you forgot anything, but I'm just confused on the fact that they're game improvement irons. And I'm not confused about what we talked about, but just the concept of game improvement irons. They decrease the loft, makes the clubs harder to hit. But the gimmick is,
they're going to make them longer too. So that makes them harder and harder.
Right. Which is just doesn't make sense to me. And I mean, everybody's obsession, especially nowadays in the game of golf, is distance. Everybody cares about distance.
Right. And that's
not the game of golf. I mean, I'll take you for example, Gene.
Right.
Like you said, you're a little bit older. Your club head speed isn't necessarily what it used to be. And you probably, I would say on average, your drives are probably 240, 250. I would say.
Yeah. Somewhere around there.
So with that being said,
I can almost see you when you're at your ball.
I hit it probably 280 to 285, right, on a good day. And, scoring wise, okay, you are right around, sub 70s, right? You are mid to low 70s, and you could definitely shoot 60s, right? That's a given, right? But you're not a long hitter. And that's where people get the game confused. And a lot of people buy into the marketing gimmicks of a game improvement iron, in which they decrease the loft, they make the clubs longer, which are two ways of making it harder to hit a golf ball, right? You increase the length, and you decrease the loft. It just doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't.
Well, and the thing that I love to hear on the golf course, you are boring. You hit the fairways, you hit greens. If you miss the green, you're 2 feet off the green. Rarely are you more than 4 feet off the green if you missed a green. And I take it as a compliment. Right. It's just that every ball is going, and to me, it's all about being fit properly and being able to get the ball close to the hole. I don't know how you judge when, like trying to hit a, 21 degree 5-iron, 21 and a half degree 5-iron, and trying to get the ball to stop. That's my whole purpose for hitting the 5-iron is I'm hitting it to a green. I'm not hitting it because I have 400 yards to cover and I want to do it in small chunks. I'm trying to hit a green. And I know, my 4-iron is 22 degrees of loft. And it's a hybrid, which helps me get the ball up in the air. And I hit the ball, high with it when I want to hit the ball high with it. And it still rolls quite a bit. And like when we're playing out at Las Colinas, number 4, I go into it a lot of times with that 4 hybrid, or my 4-iron, which is a hybrid. And I know if I land it on the green, I'm off the back. Right. So I'm hitting it to hit into the upslope to kill it. Right. But I know if I hit my 5 hybrid, my 5-iron, if I hit that, I'm going to fall short, and I'm hitting it already higher than I hit the 4 hybrid or 4-iron, and the ball's not going to chase up the hill, so I'm going to have an awkward 15, 20-yard pitch because the ball just hits that hill. So at that point, you're not even judging the spin, you're judging the rollout, which brings me to this point. When I had game improvement irons, most of the time, course management-wise, if you're wanting to play golf, you're going to aim away from more flags than you are at flags, right? That is how you play golf. Right. And that's how you manage your way around the golf course. But like you said earlier, there's a bunker, it's a tuck pin, right? And you're wanting to stop this thing. Okay, you can't do that with a game improvement iron. I remember I would have situations like that, and I would have to aim for the fat parts of the greens and have it stop. I would have to roll it. I wouldn't judge the spin. Yep. I would have to judge the roll, which you're going to be on courses where you can't judge. They're not going to be plush, right? You can't judge the rollout. It's going to hit a bump. It's going to hit a blade of grass. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. It's incredibly hard to judge. So I totally understand where you're coming from, where you get caught in those awkward situations where you're not necessarily in between clubs. You're in between rollout at that point. It's hard to judge. Right. It's very inconsistent. And the other thing, we don't have too much in Arizona because we don't have many creeks to hit over. But a lot of golf courses that I grew up playing, there's a creek in front of the green. Well, I can't run the ball through the creek. So if I know I can't carry the creek 100%, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to lay up because if I hit short, it might have rolled to the green if the stupid creek didn't stop it. So, it's just trying to help golfers understand it's not just the distance. I want to hit the ball close to the hole, and I want to manage my distance I want to know how far I can hit it and hit it that far and hit the appropriate club for that distance. It's a hard game, but it's even harder when you have to, okay, is this green falling away from me? How many people have you seen in the back of the green on number 7 at Las Colinas? They clear the little mound in the front by a foot, and the ball got 30, 40 feet up into the air and then rolls to the back because it's all downhill from there.
Yeah.
The best way I've ever come up with describing for golfers, how trajectory can actually make the ball go further. If you think it's a baseball analogy, I was gifted with a very good arm, and I could stand, I catch a ball by the left field wall, and I could turn and I could throw the ball and one hop home plate. But the ball went up. If I threw it like when I played shortstop and I went into the hole to throw to first base, if I tried to throw it like that ball is going to start rolling somewhere around the beginning of the dirt cutout of the infield, and it's going to die before it gets to home plate. Now, it went out of my hand really fast, but there's not enough trajectory to get the ball to travel.
Gotcha.
Same thing with golf clubs. If you don't hit the ball high enough, the ball can't go far enough. It's like drivers. If your club head speed is 70 miles an hour, in Arizona, again, you have but in the summer when it's like landing hitting onto a runway, the ball will run forever. But when you're out there in the winter, when the grass is starting to, the new grass is growing and everything else, people are like, I'm like 50 yards back from where I normally am. Well, that's because you don't hit the ball high enough to get the ball to carry. And, there's always that balance between getting the ball high enough and keeping the spin low enough so that you get run out.
Right. And if you're a certain caliber player, you're going to get a feeling of how to control your spin, and that's a totally different thing. But, if you get wet or soggy conditions, those golfers that have the game improvement irons aren't going to hit it as far. That's just simple fact. They're going to get all carry and they're going to plug. Right. I've been there. I know that.
Yep.
And I've had that thought process too, where I'm just like, I'm confused. I'm like, why the hell am I hitting it 40 yards shorter than I usually do? It baffled my mind. And then, I got into the technicality of it and realized that I was rolling it out 50 yards. And Arizona golf is completely different. I play in dry, arid conditions all the time, at least 7-8 months out of the year I am, right? So with that being said, when I get those days where it's rainy, I'm trying to figure out, what club do I hit here? It's 215 yards. Well, I can get a 4-iron there when it's dry. But then at that point, I'm hitting my hybrid, but my hybrid is, lofted, regularly, and I would hit it over the green. So then I would have to control how far I hit my hybrid, because I'll be at the back of the green, and let's say hole number 4 at Las Colinas, for example, right? And it's a dog leg left. There is water right, green side. And if you hit your driver in the middle of the fairway, which generally speaking, it is into wind that hole most of the time.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Most of the time.
I will say I was playing in a tournament there in high school, and it was raining. It was a sprinkle, but it was a humid day, breeze, into breeze. And I hit my driver probably 230. Right. And then I had into that hole, I had probably like 220, 230. And I was like, well, what do I do here? Because usually on that hole, I'll cut that corner with the dog leg and I'll have a 7-iron in.
Yep.
Right. But now I can't roll up my 4-iron to the green because it's like uphill and there's a front stop, right? False front.
Yep.
Kind of. The grass isn't. I mean, it's just going to grab. It's not going to roll all the way down, but it's just going to grab.
Right.
But I would have to club up and hit a 3-wood, and even then, I was worried about slicing it into the water or bringing the houses into play on the left. So your club selection. I mean, the loft is extremely detrimental to how you play golf. I mean, the player improvement irons, you're not going to have a guy who's going to contemplate whether or not he could roll this club up to the green if you were to have a game improvement iron. Oh, well, I hit my 3-iron there.
Yep.
That's what the golfer who plays the player club would say. Oh, I'll just hit my 3-iron. I'll club up, right? Because he can control the spin and can control the flight in a way to where he could position himself on the green. Yeah.
Because the guy playing the game improvement clubs, generally speaking, is not swinging at 95 miles an hour.
No, not at all.
He's swinging at 70. And he's not able, and, something for you to watch, when you're out on the golf course and you're playing with the older people, how high is the ball going to get? It's all about how hard was I hit, what angle was I hit at, and how much spin was put on me. And when you got very little loft on it, the balls. And the sad thing is, I didn't even get to this. Women's lofts are the same as game improvement clubs.
Are they really?
They are.
Really? I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all. Just regular,
which
like
makes
standard,
total sense because
standard women,
standard women's club.
Oh,
yep.
Okay. Yeah. I guess that does make sense. Yeah, because the club head speed.
Because it make it the game harder, and then you won't. Then they won't play, and makes the game such a challenge.
Yes, they're trying to get the women out of golf.
But how you watch. There are a lot of women out there. And I play with women. I go out as a single and I get added into groups, and a lot of the time you see a very high trajectory. 5-iron might get 10 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
No.
And
if there's a mound 11 feet in front of them, a mound 11 feet high in front of them, it hits the mound and it kills it.
Right. Since you bring that up, my grandmother actually got fitted into, I believe they were Ping G410 irons at the time.
Okay.
Or no. They were the M4 irons. That's what they were. But they were men's clubs. So that would make sense.
Right.
There's not really a difference in loft. At that point, it would just be the shaft, right?
Right. It would be shaft and length.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, well, that's good to know. So the club head. So when you see a women's club head, there's no difference in loft
generally speaking.
Okay. Not. But it would just be the length.
Used to be.
Okay.
Right. Used to be the difference.
Gotcha.
Now it might be a
cosmetic thing.
Difference.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So I think that's all I have for questions. Is there anything else that you want to touch on?
No. We'll keep plugging away at irons and see if we get any questions and anything that people want covered. But we'll be talking about lie angles and face progressions and radiuses and all kinds of other stuff, and might even get a little bit into grooves, but since that's not something you're going to ever change, it doesn't.
Grooves.
What are the purposes? Other than to be groovy.
Right.
But
you can't go off without.
I don't worry too much about them because I don't create them.
Right.
So as a club fitter, all I can do is and pretty much they're all similar.
Right.
But they changed a couple years ago.
Well, didn't Nike, or was it Nike or TaylorMade? Some company a few years came out with like the V grooves or whatever. What were they?
Yeah, that was Ping, I think, had the V grooves, but now all the rules of golf are such that basically they're all very, very, very similar.
It's illegal now.
Yeah.
Those clubs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. the groove, there's an angle like this, and then it goes in, and it's a volume thing, and I don't worry too much about it. It's a lot of math involved, and I'm not changing it, and I didn't make it, and I assume that they are making them legal, and I have no tools to measure it anyway.
Well, we'll get into that whenever that episode comes. Once again, thank you so much to everybody. Clubs, we'll get into that. There's also a few things, club heads, that I learned today. So I thank you for that. The game, I can't believe the women's clubs are the same as game improvement. I'll have to look into that a little bit more. Yeah. But if our audience or viewers have any questions, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, don't hesitate to send us an email, comment on our YouTube, and either me or Gene, probably Gene, most likely Gene, will get in touch with you and we'll answer as soon as possible. So thank you for listening to episode 8 of Club Fitting Chronicles. We'll see you guys in a few weeks.
See you, Josh.
See you, Gene.